Call of Cthulhu, the official video game, which is a ridiculous name to give something based on a book that was first published in 1928, meaning it can't be that official, is indeed a digital experience created from H.P. Lovecraft's terrifying tale, as well as an RPG from the 80s. And you know what? It is alright. Relying on narrative more than gameplay to get by, Cyanide Studios has actually done a pretty decent job in bringing it to the PC, Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and that's what this video is all about. Call it a review, or call it 7 things to love about Call of Cthulhu, the official video game. And to be nice, I'm going to try and be as open as possible, because going into this spoiler-free makes it far more fun. Number 7, you'll love the atmosphere. Without doubt the highlight here, the atmosphere that Cyanide has conjured up and thrown into this is applause-worthy. Admittedly, I'm a sucker for scary games and get scared by everything, but still, surely that just means I'm a good barometer for this stuff, and the balance in Call of Cthulhu is great. It will eat you alive. Putting you in the shoes of Detective Pierce, a man who has his own demons to cope with, you're tasked with investigating a suspicious fire that killed the Hawkins family and left to your own devices. There's plenty of quotes and other inspirations taken from the bizarre tale Lovecraft told years ago, and if you're a fan of his work, this will likely float your boat, even if it will then take that boat and hurl it into your face when you least expect it. Very similar to the GameCube's Eternal Darkness, which also used Cthulhu-esque ways to try and screw you up in the head, it's unsettling from almost the first moment to the last, and will openly show you things that aren't real just to make you feel more off guard. This all ties into your sanity, which we will talk about later. It'll probably never go down in anyone's best game ever list, nor does that seem to be the intent. The developers had an idea, and they've executed that very well indeed. Number 6, you'll love the bad frame rate if you hate frame rates. As mentioned at the start, Call of Cthulhu isn't the most polished title in existence. Clearly made with some budget restrictions in place, you'll notice pretty early on that yes, the frame rate isn't solid. Now don't get me wrong, it's not overly bad and just judders here and there, and given that you'll be spending most of your time investigating and exploring, it'll never impact on your experience to any great degree. This is 2018, however, so if I don't mention it, I'll have my head chopped off. I can honestly say, though, it didn't hinder my enjoyment of the game, and it's just a bigger pat on the back for what's underneath all of this. The dangling carrot that's presented within 5 minutes is enough to win over people who like something a little bit different from their video games, even if it's on the more raggedy end. If anything, it gives it personality, which would not be true if the whole thing sucked. The point is, it doesn't suck. Number 5, you'll love how different it is. This is not the type of thing you stumble upon when playing your Xbox One or PlayStation 4. It's more common on the PC, sure, but after a few hours, I hadn't really done more than talk to a few people and investigate some crime scenes, and yet I felt compelled to continue all the same. Cthulhu's hook is enough, should you be that way inclined. Relying on pacing and slowly drip-feeding you more and more clues as to what actually happened to the Hawkins family, you also have the internal issues destroying poor Detective Pierce. So while character models may look like they're melting and the script can sometimes be a tad amusing, it doesn't matter if you're happy to buy into this concept of unraveling the truth. It's also a refreshing change from just being given a gun and told to shoot people in the eyes. It shouldn't come as too much of a surprise to learn that publisher Focus Interactive is behind the strings when you remember they were also responsible for the Sherlock Holmes line of games. A different set of brains are behind that franchise, but there's a theme that runs between both, namely that you can do more than just give a gamer a weapon and tell them to run amok. And if you're like me and have no defense mechanism to horror, you'll get wrapped up in it to a horrible degree. At one point, I actually thought I may die. Number 4, you'll love its quirky ideas. Naturally, to keep individuals engaged, there has to be more than just walking around, and that's where Cthulhu tries to be a bit more off the cuff. Does a decent job with it. As well as an upgrade system that affects how you play, increasing your strength, for example, will allow you to move heavier objects, there's also a reconstructions mechanic that's not too dissimilar to what Rocksteady did with the Arkham games. Once again, there's not much more to this than hitting L2 and R2 before hunting down white glowing dots to get a better idea of the scene you're investigating, but it all ties into number 7 on this list. Atmosphere. When you're at the dinner table of the family that was burned alive and you're learning about their last meal, well, it's just really creepy, to be honest, especially because you're doing all of this in a rundown, terrifying mansion as somebody who doesn't have a hold of their own brain. There's also a basic conversation system that can be manipulated should eloquence be the trait you wish to level up, and as you can imagine, that will help with the many NPCs you'll be chatting to along the way. Not only will you learn more, but other options will also become open to you. So it's all very simple, but who says simple doesn't work? Number 3, you'll love how kinda shit it looks. That sounds harsh, right? A needless dig at the visuals, but one, I did it for effect, and two, it does add a certain charm to Call of Cthulhu because no, this is not the best looking game in the world. Far from it. It's even more ridiculous if you come to it from something like Red Dead Redemption 2, which I imagine a lot of people might, but that's why once again, you've got to approach it in the right way. This hasn't been designed as an all-encompassing beast that's meant to bring the gaming industry to its knees. Instead, it's a quirky niche title that will worm its way into the heads of those a little tired of the status quo. I mean this in a positive way too, but it may just serve as a reminder that even the 7 out of 10s of the world have something to offer the right person. Number 2, you'll love it more at the start than towards the end. You could say this about most games really, but it's fair to point out that Call of Cthulhu is better at the start of its journey than when it begins to wrap everything up. Spooky tales or ones that focus on the occult often do a great job in setting the scene to make your eyes bulge out of your head, but paying them off is far harder. It's not like this drops off a cliff, far from it, but its real grit and bite does come in the first few hours where it's dropping plot points as if they're about to go out of fashion and leaving you with a big, well, what does that mean to go figure out? With that said, the way Cthulhu toys with Pierce's sanity and how that continues to get worse throughout is great. You have to manage it as best possible. The escape sequences where you have to both avoid creatures from the deep and keep an eye on them too are harrowing. Get this wrong, and again you'll fall further into madness. This can result in getting phobias as well that also impact what you can and can't do in the game. There are seemingly dozens of paths you can go down, even by mistake, and these can switch up how you respond to situations quite significantly. They can be a little frustrating at times in how they play out, but the sheer ingenuity of it alone deserves a warm hug. Number 1, you'll love that it actually got released. A few years ago it seemed like this was a dead-in-the-water project. Bounced around from studio to studio, including the aforementioned Frogwares who are responsible for Sherlock Holmes, there was a good chance this would never see the light of day, especially as it was first announced in 2014. That is a long-ass time ago. It did manage to pique the interest of a certain audience, however, as you can see by doing a quick Google on the subject. Trailers were met with a decent amount of intrigue, and above all that, this kind of below AAA game tier, which admittedly is a horrible term, but one that kind of works, don't exist much anymore, so when they do manage to get all the way through to the other side, I think it's something to be celebrated. So Call of Cthulhu isn't going to be in any best of the year lists, but if you fancy a little trip back in time to enjoy something that feels very much of its time, well, here it is. And again, all that stuff with sanity and going crazy and running around the place not knowing what's going on, that's top stuff. Well done, Cyanide. You whoop some ass. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below, like the video, share the video, subscribe to VG 24/7, and go watch some other videos too, because let's face it, what else is there to do?